Hello everyone, Caroline here. In today's video I want to share my 10 cards that I created with the Spellbinders Card Kit for the month of May 2020. The theme of the card kit is all the little things. So let's get started with card number 1. So for card number 1, I started out with a white card base, and I chose one of the pattern papers and die cut it with a Spellbinders, a frame die. And then I used a bunch of the other dies, and you see here how I cut this outer frame twice in gold and white, and then the inner piece in white. And I cut out the lovely with gold and white, and then a few flowers and leaves. Now this pattern paper reminded me a lot of a baby blanket, so I don't know, for some reason. So I decided to make this kind of a baby card. I glued down the background, and then I used my glue stick and just attached the gold frame to the white. So I wanted this to be a little bit thicker. And I also glued down the two lovelies. And then I added some foam dots to that little stroller, and I created a little 3D piece here. Then I used a little sentiment from a Fiskar's sentiment stamp set, and it says "New Baby." I'm embossing this with gold embossing powder, and then I frame it on the gold mirror cardstock. Then I assembling my card here. I'm gluing down the frame. And I'm gluing down the inner piece. And then I'm adding my stroller in the middle. Center this. And I'm adding this little sentiments kind of like in an angle underneath the stroller and on the frame. And then that lovely goes right underneath the frame. And to embellish the card, I'm assembling, first I'm giving this little stroller a little flower there for embellishing, and then I'm assembling my flowers. I'm using the white on top of the gold to glue them on top of each other. And then I'm adding them on top and on the bottom in a triangle on my card here. I'm adding those little tiny leaves. Sometimes it's tricky to get it right. There we go. And then I'm adding gold stickles. Actually, first I pulled out a couple of Nuvo drops that I thought would match, but then I was like, I think I stay with the gold. So I'm adding the gold to the flowers, and I'm adding some glossy accent to those little wheels. And I added also a little dot on the flower that is on the stroller. And for final touch, I'm adding also some golden sticker drops randomly on the card. And here is the finished card. And I like this card because you can use it for a boy or a girl. Okay, card number 2. So for card number 2, I pulled out that little cat stamp and also pulled out a couple of distress inks. And with a little finger dauber, I'm just randomly, you know, dab on the colors in circles on that little piece of paper. That's actually randomly white cardstock. I don't even know what kind of cardstock, and it doesn't really matter for this. And I think it's just a scrap piece. And then I'm just, you know, I'm really liking those lucky cats, or I call them lucky cats when they have like those 3 colors. So I wanted to create a card like a cat like that. So I'm stamping my cat right randomly on top of those colors. So it looks like a 3-colored cat pattern. Then I thought I want to make it a pair, so I am gonna mirror stamp that cat. And for that I just pulled out one of the paper smudges. I have those big geometric forms, and I'm using that, lay it on my Misty. And then I'm using the cat stamp. I'm adding it on like I would stamp on it. And then I actually stamp on that solid stamp. Carefully push that down. And then I'm using my other piece here, and I lay it on top. And I push this down to get a mirror image of this little cat. There it is. It's a little bit weaker than the other one. So I am just taking a black marker, permanent marker, and just go over the lines, and I actually make this one a little girly cat. So I'm adding a few little eyelashes to the eyes. Then I'm assembling my card here. I have this My Favorite Things stitched frame die that I'm using, and also from Daisy May Designs I'm using this heart. I cut it out of foil, and then I'm actually using another piece of pattern paper that already where I roughed up the edge already, and I'm just you know, buff in this light pink color to distress the edge more. Then I'm gluing this on to my pink piece here and attaching this to my white card base. And then I'm adding my little hearts. That's this from the die cut pieces, and I'm doubling up. And then attach my little kitty cats here. First the heart. And then the 2 cats next to each other. And I lift them up with foam tape. And I think they turned out so cute. Now for the girl cat, I'm using one of the teeny tiny flowers and just add them to the top, so make it even more girly looking. And then I used the stamp, the sentiment stamp Hello Lovely, and I cut this out and also inked the edges in pink, and then I'm adding a little die cut sentiment This Is Us and framed it on gold mirror. And for embellishing I'm using the pink sequins from the kit and also silver pink stickles. And here's the finished card. Card number 3. So for card number 3 I'm using a piece of that light blue cardstock that came with the kit and this tie-dye background pattern paper, and a bunch of the die cut pieces, the rainbow, the kite, and the clouds. And I am actually give them more dimension by etching or by inking the edges. And then I'm stamping out the sentiment or happy day on a piece of black cardstock, and I use white embossing powder for that. Then I cut this out and frame this again on this gold foil. And then I rough up the edge of that blue cardstock. And I'm taking this pattern paper, and I rip this with my fingers or with my hands and make it kind of like use the shape of the pattern to rip two pieces. And then I attach them with liquid glue to my to that blue background on top of each other. I wanted this blue cardstock to come through because I want this to be kind of the sky. Then I make a little 3D piece out of the kites and also of the little rainbow. And then I attach clouds on the top. Actually, first I'm attaching the kite to my rainbow, and then I'm attaching the clouds, so I have a real big 3D piece. And then I attach this with foam dots and with liquid glue to my background, and I attach also glue on the other clouds that I have. It's almost like a rainbow on a rainbow if you want. And then I'm attaching this rainbow. So this has a lot of dimension, this card, which I love. And then I am adding this other little cloud and add my sentiment right in the middle on the bottom. And I think that black stands out very well to all those soft colors. Then I'm using my gold stickles and randomly add some dots. And this is the finished card. Okay, card number 4. So for this card, I actually created my card base out of the yellow cardstock that came with the kit, and then I used this flowery background piece pattern paper and cut it out to size with a die. And I created myself out of craft paper stencil that I could use, and then I'm using a sugar glitter paste, and I'm using my spatula and just put it through my stencil here. So what I want to do is, like, when I am adding my die cut piece, I will have this glitter paste coming through my die cut piece and gives it an extra dimension. Now I wanted to give this background a little bit more sparkle, so I added just different gold tones splatters with my watercolors. And then I'm adding the background to my card base. And now I use my die cut piece, the frame, and I'm setting it or gluing it right on top of that of the glitter paste, and so the glitter paste comes through the holes of the die cut piece. That looks very nice. And then I'm adding the middle piece in white. I want this to be kind of a soft card. And then I'm using from my Concord in 9 sentiment set, the kind-hearted sentiment, and I embossed this in gold on a piece of white cardstock, and I frame this again on the gold foil. Then I'm using those super pretty butterfly stickers that come with the kit, and I'm using one of the biggest ones, the green one, in the middle of my frame here. And I also attaching 2 little ones on top and the bottom. And then I'm attaching my sentiment. The kind comes from the die cut pieces. And then here's my extra sentiment, hearted friend. So it's like kind-hearted friend. And then I'm adding my gold stickles. And this is the finished card. Okay, here's card number 5. So for this card, I'm gonna create my own background. And I cut out with my die cutting machine all those little butterflies using this stamping mask paper. So I cut them all out, and then I will glue them onto a piece of white cardstock. And I want to create kind of a pattern where all the butterflies fly in one, come from the bottom and fly to the top, spreading out. And there where the butterflies are glued down, it will stay white when I'm ink blending my background. So I'm using this super pretty yellow, it calls Bumblebee, and then adding mint color, which is kind of like a greenish, light greenish. And then I am using a blue-green, which is Caribbean. And I'm very careful when I'm adding my ink. I'm more dabbing it down because the butterflies, I don't want the butterflies to come off. And when this is all done, I'm using a little bit of water and give this background kind of a distress look. And I also adding gold splatters and some pearlescent or pearl colored splatters. When I'm done, I'm removing my little butterflies, and I'm making sure I dry this very well. And then I'm using the stamps, the butterfly stamps, and I'm stamping with embossing ink into the white places, and emboss the butterflies in gold onto my cardstock. So it's almost like all the butterflies having a white shadow, if you will. Now I'm adding a gold mirror cardstock as a matting, as a layer. And then I also put an extra buffing around the edge of this piece. And then I mount this onto my gold foil with 3D foam. And I'm using one of the sentiments from the die cuts, but I'm cutting away. It was a speech bubble, but I cut away kind of this triangle thing from the speech bubble and just make this an oval sentiment. I mounted this, or I glued this on to gold foil piece. And I'm adding for final touch gold and white drops, stickles and Nuvo drops. And that's the card. Card number 6. Okay, so for this card, I wanted to create my own jar. And I'm stamping this with archival ink in vintage photo on a piece of watercolor paper. And then I'm using my one of my Derwent Inktense pencils that's in a color willow that matches nicely the vintage photo, and just sketch in the dimensional look, like the bottom and the top. And I just want to use this as a guideline, and so I'm using my brush with water and just smudge this out so you can barely see this anymore. I just want to know where I'm putting my shadows. And then I'm go in and dry this, and with the intense pencils it will not move anymore. Even if I put water on top, it will stay put. Now I'm using one of the Vicky Bouton watercolor brushes in the color Beach, and just give this this top, the lid, a little color. I want this to be like a golden metallic lid, so I'm starting out with a beigey color first, put in shadows, and then I am adding my gold and come in from the side to the middle to give it kind of like a metallic sheen. Then I'm going in with this mint color, and I'm just wanna add some of the dimension, so it looks like actually like glass. And then when I dry this, I put it wet in wet. I'm adding in a pink color. I fill this jar with pink, and coming in from the sides first to leave more lighter color in the middle of the jar, so it looks dimensional. And I'm adding more darker color to the sides and to the bottom, and then I dry this. And now I am using my other pieces here. I used a white card base. I used this striped pattern paper that I glued on a piece of just old sketchbook paper to make it more sturdy. And then I cut out the frame, and I cut the inner piece out of the frame and cut this twice to make it 4 corners. And then I'm using my jar, and I'm using a sentiment from a Simon Says stamp set, which fits nicely on the jar. It says thank you. And I will emboss this in gold. I'm using my weather mark, adding this, and then I'm at my gold, and I think that looks pretty nice. Then I'm using those little strawberries that came in the die cuts, and I'm giving them also more dimension by buffing up the edge or inking the edges. And then I'm adding my background piece to my card base. And then I'm attaching those edges, those corners. And then I'm adding this frame to the middle, attaching my jar, but before I attach it, I will put a little baker's twine that's like gold and white, and adding this little 3D tag that came from those sticker sheet, and then I will attach it with foam tape to my card center here. And I will attach those little strawberries, one on the top, and then 3 on the bottom with foam tape. So it almost looks like a jar of jelly or lemonade. Then I'm adding some gold stickles, and here's the finished card. Okay, card number 7. So for this card I used this map pattern paper and one of this purpley looking pattern, background pattern, and I cut this piece of the map into pieces around, like I just went by the streets, and then I inked the edges with green to give it more dimension. And then I'm creating myself out of a piece of craft paper and adding some ink. I want to make kind of a sign. So I used those 3 sentiments that came with the die cuts, and I cut them to size and then add some water around it. And I'm creating this little 3D piece with a roller. And then I'm creating my scene here by gluing down the top and the bottom part of the map, and gluing this down to my card base. And then I'm creating my card here. I'm adding my roller and then adding some foam tape to the sign and adding some sequins for final embellishing. And I also added some gold stickles. I thought it might need more sparkle. And here is the finished card. Card number 8. So for this card I created again my own card base out of this lighter pink cardstock that came with the kit. And then I also used an embossing folder to create a background where I cut out the inner piece of the frame because I want to create a shaker card. So I'm adding a piece of acetate behind the opening here and create my shaker element. I'm just using the foam tape double, and then I'm using my powder tool and make sure it's nicely anti-static there. And then I'm adding my sequins, adding a few more, and then I'm gluing the backing on. There's my shake element. So then I'm adding another frame of foam tape all around the edge, and I attach this to my card base. Now I used this sentiment smile and and that came actually from a Spellbinders kit from last year. I thought it matches very well, goes very well with this card. So I also added the flowers, the die cut, and then I added my frame, and then I cut out the other die cut, the same flowers, and add them on top with foam tape to give it dimension. And I used the leftover pieces here and there for leaves, extra leaves. And I also added the little butterfly that came with the kit. And I also added, for embellishing, 3 sequins. And here is the finished card. Card 9. So for this card as well, I cut out a card base with the raspberry colored cardstock that came in the kit. And I'm using this watercolor background and a bunch of sentiments. And I cut out 2 ovals with a Spellbinders die. And I'm adding some gold splatters to this watercolor background, because I thought that gives it a little bit more sparkle, and since it's watercolor, it will look very nicely. Then I'm adding this to my card base. And then I add my oval here, my outer oval, and then the other oval, the scallop edge oval. I cut it out of a piece of a specialty paper that I still had in my scrapbooks. And I'm adding this right on top. And I'm creating my 3D piece here with the typewriter. I'm creating my centerpiece here. I'm using those flowers and also this little letter with the flowers. And I'm creating a little 3D piece out of those Love You More tag banner, little banner. And I stick this right behind the typewriter. And on top I also add this little bird. Then I thought it needs another sentiment. So I recently purchased this paper tray ink stamp set, and I really like the sentiments on there. So I chose the one that says, what did I do to deserve you? And I stamped this in green. And I cut it out and mounted this on, or framed it on a piece of gold foil. And I'm adding this underneath. There. Then I'm using some sequins here and adding them around. And I also add some gold stickles. And I'm also using some glossy accent on the bird and on the typewriter. And here's the finished card. Card number 10. So for card number 10, I actually cut one of the card bases that came with the kit to a square. And I also cut out one of the mint pieces, a matching square. And then this blue flower pattern paper. And I'm just layer this on top. And I cut out a little circle out of vellum, and I'm adding this in the middle. It's kind of like a guide for me. And then I'm adding this little kitty cat that came from the 3D sticker sheet. And I also added the lovely, which I put together by gold and white. I glued this together. And then I'm creating a little frame with the leaves coming from the left and the right, and add this around the kitty cat. And then I also have a bunch of flowers that I cut out and assemble the flowers, and then I'm adding them to my wreath there. And then I'm using my gold stickles and adding the centers to the flowers, and also white Nuvo drops. And then I thought I'm gonna add a few butterflies. So I used my leftover piece of vellum and just stamped out 3 of the little butterflies. And I used a Versamark. And I will emboss them in gold. And then I'm using my little die cut machine here and cut out the butterflies. And then I'm adding the little butterflies to my card. And I'm adding a little more stickles. And here is the finished card. So, and here coming all the cards again in close-up. I hope you like this video and you like my cards and you found some inspiration, what you could do with the kit or what you could do with other stuff you have, just some ideas. And I had a lot of fun working with this kit. I have to say though, I had troubles with the sentiments. Usually I find that there are a lot of sentiments in the kit, but this time I really had to go to my stash and find some sentiments that I like and that would work with my cards. This is not a bad thing. I think always using stuff from the stash to incorporate with the card kits is awesome. So I am just thought this time there were not so many sentiments, different sentiments. So here's the shaker card. Well, I hope I see you again in my next video. And until then, please stay well and have a great day. Bye.